Hit the button. Hello, everybody. Well, once again, it's a beautiful day in Melbourne. Quite warm, 100 degrees or so. So we're talking to someone who is in Colorado, where she's hoping it's not going to snow tomorrow. So that's the extremes of the weather patterns that we have right now in the world. So as we know, we're talking about saying yes to life, which is what Ray and I have done, what Susan Sanderford, who is our guest, has done, and we thank her very much for joining us, as we thank you for joining us, because we know that you are ready to start listening to yourself and start saying yes to your life and be empowered as Susan has been. So Ray's going to tell you a little bit about Susan before we start so that you feel very comfortable with her as we do. Thank you, Ray.
I will basically read this bio that Susan so kindly sent us. She's currently living 3 lives. Well, it's pretty hard to believe, and it wouldn't be easy. And she says, it ain't easy. She's a spiritual medium with 24 years of experience, having communicated with over 8,000 spirit beings living in the spirit dimension, all for the purpose of healing grief, understanding and teaching the afterlife, and helping folks on their spiritual growth journey here on planet Earth. She accomplishes this by way of telephone consultations, facilitating healing retreats, and conducting pilgrimages to sacred sites throughout the world. She's also currently proudly serving as town manager of St. Louis, Colorado, the oldest town in the state of Colorado. Her primary mission in life over the past 14 years, in concert with her beloved husband, at the request of Jesus and his Divine Mother Mary, has been creating a healing centre in Colorado called the Casa de Santa Maria. Her life experiences leading up to all the above involved being a mother of 3 wonderful boys, a computer graphics artist, designing schematic plans for the US military on such projects as the Honeywell Aerospace F-15 Eagle jet fighter, Boeing's Osprey V-22 helicopter, then entering the newspaper field as a computer graphics specialist, from there becoming a publisher and owner of the Good News newspaper in Central Florida called The Mirror. I think we can do with more good news newspapers too. And it was about that time when Milt came into her life. And as she put it, all heaven broke loose. That's when her mediumship ability began. Spirits began speaking to her day and night, causing her to question her sanity. Following Spirit's lead in travelling the world, living in beautiful Byron Bay, Australia for 2 years, and finally Jesus asking her to return to America to create the Casa de Santa Maria, where his mother's healing energy would reside along with her holy helpers. And she says, other than that, not much going on, but there's something we nearly forgot. Recently, she's teamed with Robert Child, the Emmy-nominated writer, director, producer, and they've co-created a 1-hour television drama pilot titled Guides. It tells the story of the afterlife adventures of 4 souls who become spirit guides to help the living in their time here on Earth in times of crisis.
Very interesting.
And very busy.
Very much so. So thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And I really love the concept of saying yes to life. I think it's so true, especially when you go on your spiritual journey, the necessity of saying yes, even when it's hard to say yes, because there's a lot of times and a lot of things that are asked of us that we think, oh, I can't do that. But you say yes anyway at Spirit's nudging, and it opens up so many avenues to life that you would never dreamt of or thought of in your own journey. if you learn to follow your heart and say yes to what your heart is leading you to do, and just following those little intuitive nudges to see where they take you. So it's a wonderful concept. And Milt and I, we always thought it made sense to say yes to life, because what would we have missed if we didn't go on the journey?
Exactly.
What would I be missing if I didn't go down that path? What would happen? And I have to say, it's been an amazing journey, and continues to be an amazing journey, at least where Spirit has led us, in this journey. So it's been wonderful. So thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you for saying yes to us. You came back just like that. And how could we not say yes? Milt said in his email. So that's,
why not do something fun? This is fun.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, like you say, even though there's hard work behind something, well, it's not hard work. It's I always find it's the surrendering to what you're doing, and then it will just flow. But when you try to push it, or get overwhelmed, or I can't, and use all those negative types of words, I mean, that's what's projected back to you, isn't it? So we know where you're going to, which is pretty amazing, and the TV medium is a grand forum for getting these messages out to people who would have no access otherwise to know that there's something different. So, Susan, where was your first aha moment that you can recall?
I think my first aha moment was came out of a place of misery for me. At the time, and this was way back when I was 38, I sat down on the couch. I was born and raised fundamentalist.
Not that long ago.
Not that long ago. Not that long ago. About 24 or 25 years ago. So I was in a miserable marriage. I was in a very miserable place in my life. And I was in an unhappy marriage. I just felt like I had been doing it right, the way the church taught me to believe, and following all the rules, and, taught Sunday school, and, being raised in a fundamentalist Christian background. You just did what the preacher said and the church said, and you just followed it hook, line, and sinker. Yet I found myself at 38 in this miserable marriage. I was so unhappy. And I can remember sitting down on the couch one day and I saying, God, where are you? I pray, I've done it right. I went to Bible school. I read my Bible. I said, where's that God of miracles? Where's the God that parted the Red Sea? And then this thought popped into my head. You know what? I'm going to throw all that out the window, and God, I want you to show me what truth is. And so I literally unknowingly started a spiritual journey without knowing that's what I was doing, because I invited divine source to be my teacher. Didn't even know that was possible, and didn't even know if it would work, and didn't even know if anything would happen if I did that. But I just did. It was like out of the blue. You know what, God, I'm going to teach, you be my teacher. And I stopped believing what the church said. And, I said, there's got to be a better way. And again, no bells or whistles or anything went off that day, but that was saying yes to a different way of being at that moment. And what started happening was dreams, mystical experiences, metaphysical experiences after I did that, which opened the door to something greater than myself that I really didn't even know was out there up to that 38 years of my life, because I don't ever remember having one metaphysical or spiritual experience up to that point. So in some ways, saying yes to a new path was the defining moment of my spiritual journey, was saying there's got to be another way. There's got to be another way to experience life. And that's kind of what led me down that path on my spiritual journey. But I didn't know it was a spiritual journey at the time. I just went looking for God. I wanted to know if there was really a God out there. But I didn't know it was a spiritual journey until much later, when just all the different experiences started happening, which led to the second saying yes to life. And again, sometimes saying yes to life means it's a difficult decision, maybe something you don't want to do, you know what I mean? And you have to say yes to it, but it leads to something much greater. So at the time, going on the spiritual journey, looking for God, just saying I'm giving everything up. And at the time, the husband I was married to, he was, sorry, because I just heard the cat try to come in the door.
Okay, we're used to it.
Okay, good. So anyway, my husband at the time decided he wanted to buy this newspaper. Remember the Good News newspaper? It's called The Mirror. And I didn't want that. I didn't want him to buy it. I didn't want him to buy that paper. And I can remember driving down the road. I had 3 boys at the time, all 15 and under. And I'm bawling, absolutely sobbing and saying, God, please don't let him buy this paper. I don't want this. I know I'll end up running it. I mean, I'm just sobbing. Please don't let this happen. And I hear this audible male voice that says, do not be afraid. I will be with you. And I had to turn around and look in the back of the car to see the car with me. And there, of course, there was nobody there. And I heard it again. Do not be afraid. I will be with you. And this peace just melted over me like, okay, if this is the path that I'm supposed to go, I can go even though I don't want it. So that's one of those saying yeses to something you don't want to do. But there was such that incredible voice that was so powerful and brought me so much peace. I felt how could I not go in that direction? Which then led to the fourth one.
Can I interrupt there, Susan? Because you used an interesting word there. You used the word I felt. And I feel that when you heard the voice, you heard it, you're crying, you're in that situation. But when you go into your feelings, that it's correct.
Correct. That's right. Yes.
Yeah. So it's feeling as well as everything external, but it's going back into that feeling, and you just know. You just know.
Right. It was that piece that says, okay, I guess this is where I'm supposed to go. This is what's supposed to happen, and sure enough, the cat got in. So we'll let the cat go, okay. My hubby's not doing his job out there. He was supposed to keep him out. So anyway, that led to the next event, which was what led Milt into my life. Because on this journey, I can remember that I didn't know what love was. I can remember recognizing that my husband at the time didn't love me. And I remember saying, well, if this is not love, what is love? And I can remember saying, okay, God, how can I give love to anybody if I don't know what it is? And I remember asking God, specifically show me what love was. Well, that newspaper led Milt into my life through very synchronistic ways. And we had met through doing a event together that I was covering for the newspaper. And it was they had all the mascots from the different teams doing a Olympic, sort of a fun Olympic event to raise money for Make-A-Wish Foundation. And Milt was the publicist for that event. And I met him, and it was like I knew him right away, which of course I didn't figure out till later that I knew him from other lifetimes, But he wrote me the next day after the event and says, you know what, I feel like I need to do just something different. Do you want me to come help you with the newspaper? Because he was feeling called to do that. So he came to work as the editor of the newspaper, and we just became really, really good friends really, really fast. Here I'm married to someone else and trying to save my marriage, and he's this bachelor living on the lake and never getting married again, But it all culminated exactly on January 16th, I think it was 1995. It really helped that we went to breakfast one day, and I sat down, and I was really miserable because my marriage wasn't working, and And I said to Milt, because we were doing a work breakfast, and I said, nobody's ever loved me for being me. In his very brotherly way, he puts his hand on my head, says, well, I just want you to know I'll always love you for being you. And then this thought popped into my mind. I said this out loud to him. I said, when you went away for Christmas to visit your family, that's the first time I've ever missed anybody. And all of a sudden it was like this bag was pulled off my head, and I sucked in my breath, and I didn't say anything. And I thought, oh my God, this is what love is. And for the first time, I recognized divine love in somebody else through Milt. So I didn't know what to say. I just, we went back to work, and I gave him a little hug and ran home like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do with this? And I went home, of course, in my only way, being, a spiritual, my background coming from the Bible, I looked up the love chapter, which is love is patient, love is kind, love is, doesn't look for wrongs. It's just a beautiful chapter. And I'm going, oh, this is what it is. And so the next morning, I couldn't sleep all night because I realized, wow, this is what love is. I didn't even know it would eventually be a relationship. But I go the next morning, and Milt's there at work. He knew something was going on. How he knew that, I don't know. The minute I saw him, I just go, oh, I just start bawling, and he puts his arms around me. And I said, God brought you into my life so I would know what love is. And he goes, I know. And we just both got it right there, that moment, that was a divine bringing together of, he showed me, I'd never seen it in someone else. The way he treated people, the way he, it was just really lovely. And I needed to know that. If I was going to work or help God, I would need to know what love is. And within 3 days, I asked my husband, my alcoholic husband, to move out, and said, I can't do this anymore. And Milt and I have pretty much been together 24 hours a day, 7 days a week since then. And interestingly enough, I had a friend do an astrology reading for me years later, and she looked back on that January 16th and 17th when that happened. And there were 5 things that happens only once in someone's lifetime, all happened on those days. And one of the major ones was that Pluto hit my north node, which meant major transformation, major awakening. So, I had a choice then. Would I stay in my marriage, or would I say yes to love? How could I not say no to divine love? How could I not go in that direction? So again, partnered with that was a very difficult choice. Do I stay in a marriage where I'm not happy, or do I choose love and see where it goes? So I think that's really fascinating sometimes, that saying yes always means there's some type of spiritual growth or spiritual choice you have to make, almost to put a little rubber stamp on yes, I'm going that way, even though I don't understand it or don't know where it's going, and throws you into the depths of fear. You gotta, how could you not follow love? So that was sort of the number 2. Yeah.
I can understand with Milt, because for you who don't know, Milt and I have been doing a lot of corresponding, and right. I can sit at the computer, and I go back to the days when you had pen pal, so I'm used to writing and I enjoy it. And I just sit there and write, and I think, gee, you're babbling on here, Vicki. But I feel so comfortable just writing to him as a friend that it's easy. So I can understand how you had that connection and that feeling that you just knew. And he always signs with a little cross and a little hug. And I think, gee, that's nice. So I can completely and utterly understand. Yes, it is beautiful when you can connect with somebody on a level that you don't really understand why you connect, but you just know you connect, which is what beautifully happened with you and Milt.
And there were a lot of synchronistic events that happened around that. But it went from one moment being nothing to the next moment, oh my gosh, it was like, just like that, where you saw something you never saw before. And so I chose love, which led me down the path of becoming, and I tell you, the only reason I became interested in becoming a medium was the fact that Milt is 24 years older than me. And I thought, I don't want to lose this relationship. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason I got interested to seeing if I could communicate with spirit was because one day I knew he would leave before me, and I didn't want to lose that connection. So it was purely selfish reasons that that awakened in me. But to be honest, it was the love that kind of blew open all my chakras, the divine love. When I teach mediumship classes, I kind of do it differently in that it's not a skill you learn. You invite divine spirit to show you what love is, and it blows open all your chakras, which allows you to connect, and you connect with source, and then you just get everybody else along the way. So being a medium wasn't necessarily something I chose for my spiritual journey. Evidently I did before it came in, but I didn't necessarily choose it in this lifetime. Our book is The Reluctant Medium, because being raised fundamentalist Christian, I had a lot of stuff to work out with all the, you're not supposed to do that and that's wrong. And yet there were so many amazing experiences from spirit that proved it differently, that it wasn't something that was wrong. It was actually something very healing and very, very beautiful. And so that's what started our journey together. And especially since his wife, Mary Jane, died in 1981 of leukemia, that's how I started getting interested in it, and the fact that he told me about his experiences of connecting with her through a trance medium. And this was like 11 years before we even met, and how she brought through messages to him that he would know that she was okay. And I thought, well, that's really, really cool. And then I said, well, gee, because I loved Milt, I believed him. I wasn't skeptical. It was just, how could I not believe what he's saying, that this is true, even though I'd never experienced it? So we were talking that day as we were working together, and I said, gee, I wonder whatever happened to my grandfather. And that night I had this most amazing dream. Never dreamt in my life, never had a vivid dream in my life. And in the dream, I was walking into a morgue, and there was my grandfather's dead body laying on a table. And as I walked toward it, he sat up and transformed into this most beautiful looking young man, and brilliant light just coming out of him. I mean, he was this close and just smiled at me. And I knew that was my grandfather, because I had questioned the day before. So really, part of it is I have to thank my grandfather too, because he was the first person from the spirit world that came to me. And I thought, well, I got to try this out again. Can you really communicate with spirit, the people in spirit? So I said, Grandma, come let me know how you're doing. But I didn't get a dream that night. But 2 weeks later, all of a sudden I wake up in the dream, and there's my grandmother sitting in front of me. We're at a picnic table. She's sitting in front of me, and I go, Grandma, how you doing? Because I knew right away that was her. And she goes, I'm doing just fine, and I'm making sure your angels get fed. And no, I'm making sure you and your brother and sister angels are getting fed. And I thought, well, that's the coolest thing, because, and then I woke up and I realized it's my grandmother. That's the way she showed love. She owned a restaurant all her life. And so I knew that was her. That's how we would go, and she'd always make us spaghetti. And that was the way she showed love, was through feeding us, And so that was my second encounter with spirit, which then really took me down the rabbit hole of wanting to meditate and learn how to communicate. Again, mainly because of Milt, because I didn't want to lose that connection when he left the planet. And, and so it was really, really just kind of amazing from there, the dreams and those kind of things that happen that made me realize that spirit, you can communicate spirit, and it wasn't a no-no. It wasn't a bad thing. Matter of fact, it was very healing, and it made you realize there was so much greater, something greater in life going on once you connect to it. And I always have this saying, if you pray to God, you only get God. And so on going on that journey, I realized I had to trust that God, this is where God wanted me to go, was down that path. And so we have in the Reluctant Medium book, we tell the story of my very, very first reading, which was quite dramatic for a mother who had lost a daughter who was 19, I believe, to suicide. And I had asked God to show me why I needed to do it. And so that story is in that book, The Reluctant Medium, that showed what proved to me that it was okay for me to be a medium, because I really needed that. I needed that assurance that it was okay. The cool part about this is when Milt and I came together, I started, connecting with spirit and that kind of thing. The medium that connected Milt with his wife back in 91, who died of leukemia, her name was Hester B. Jackson. And when he went to her, they became really good friends, and the guides through her told Milt they would work together one day. But then she died 2 years later. Well, fast forward to 11 years later, I'm sitting down to meditate and try to connect with spirit, and I hear this voice in my head, and I go, and the voice says, there's 12 cans of food in your pantry. Now, have you ever counted the cans of food in your pantry?
No.
Guess how many cans there were? 12. And then I go, okay, I want more proof, And they said, there's 32 bath towels in your house. Now, do you know how many bath towels you have? Have you ever counted?
I know there's too many sometimes.
Right. So I'm like a mad woman going through my house looking for towels, and sure enough, there were 32 bath towels in my house. I went through the laundry and everything. And I go, I want more proof, and I go back to the computer and I listen, and they said, well, there's 16 pennies on your mantle. And I figured one of my boys had put that up. And sure enough, there were 16 pennies one of the boys had put up on my mantle. I come back, I go, one more proof. And they go, no, you either believe or you don't. And I finally said, well, who's telling me this? And I clearly heard Hester B. Jackson. And of course, Hester B. Jackson was the medium that Milt was supposed to work with, but she died. Little did we realize we would be working with her from the other side. And we were, and so she literally trained me as a medium from the other side. And that's how I trained as a medium. I didn't study under any other teachers or anything else, mainly because I didn't have the money to go do all those things, but literally spirit taught me, and she played that role of being my teacher to teach me how to connect in and to meditate and what I needed to do to open up my channels and, what opened my third eye and all that kind of stuff. And it was really kind of amazing that all these synchronistic things happened that we must have set up before we came in. So I did say yes to being a medium, although I've always said I've been the reluctant medium. It wasn't something a path I would have chosen for my life, yet it's something that has really helped a lot of people heal. And just this major exclamation point from spirit about that first reading that proved to me that this was something that was divine and of God and very healing, So that, go ahead.
Just interrupt there. It's interesting how you as the person needed the proof. And
yes.
I remember reading in James Van Praag's book, one of the ones I read, and because I would have people coming to me and he said, ask for proof, who are they? I thought, I hadn't thought to do that. And the first one that came through after that was my grandfather, on father's side. And then he was talking about my grandmother, and I assumed he meant his mother or his wife. And so I rang up Mum and Dad, and he showed me something this person did. And so I explained over the phone what it was, and Mum said, Tom, did you do it? No. Anyway, one day I was driving with Mother in the car, and I said, this is what the person did, and it was something to do with my fingers or what. And Mum just went pew, sitting there, and she said, that's Grandmother Bevis, which was her grandmother, who she only knew for a short while of her life. So it's interesting how you can keep asking for proof, and it will come.
Yes.
Some that that it, and there's I never knew the lady. Mum didn't know her, knew about her and things like that, and knew a little bit, had some time with her. So it really is And I sometimes think if you're doing the doubt, which is what you were doing, actually shut it down. It's like, oh, you don't believe us, why are we going to bother with you?
That's me.
Right. Well, that's definitely right, yes. So it's keeping that open heart, that open flow. And as I always say, if it's not true, as long as you're having fun, that's the main thing.
Right. And that's really right. And it's funny about the spiritual world, they always say that, in your spiritual journey, I mean, the human nature says, when I see it, then I'll believe it.
Mm-hmm.
But the spiritual world has to believe it. Then you see it all over the place. And that was sort of like the exclamation point when they said, no, you either believe it or you don't. And, and so we had just lots of fun experiences, as I was opening up and connecting and that kind of, just lots of synchronistic things, which led us to move to Virginia Beach, and what opened up in the way that spirit started talking to me. I call it my third eye chalkboard. And so they'll write things out for me, and I can close my eyes and they'll say, go to do this, go to Virginia Beach, go to da 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 da. And we've always listened to it. We've always said, okay, let's see where this goes, instead of being afraid or, oh my God, is this some weirdo spirit talking to us, leading us down on a path? We've always listened to, when I'd meditate and it would say, go do this, go do that, we would go do it and see what it had for us. So the saying yes became a habit to where spirit led us. Instead of staying and saying in safety, we were on this exciting journey of seeing where it went. But of course, when you go on your spiritual journey and you invite divine spirit into you to be your teacher, what's going to happen is spirit's going to clean you out. And all your unhealed wounds and pains and all that stuff is going to start coming up, which is what I had to go through. And the reason I had to go through it, because how could I teach it to somebody else if I didn't heal what was unhealed in me? And I can remember at one point when we were living in Virginia Beach, we met in Orlando, Florida. Spirit moved us up to Virginia Beach. And we were there kind of working with the Casey ARE. You're familiar with ARE. And which was really helpful, because I just probably gobbled up every book in that metaphysical library that ever was, because I was so hungry to know what's going on, what's happening, and it was, but I can remember all my unhealed wounds coming up at that time. And at points it got so painful, because you had to face, painful things that happened to you in your life that you needed to look at. And I can remember, meditating and saying, Spirit, I don't want to be here anymore. This is just too hard. I don't want to have to feel this pain. And I hear this voice that says, well, you can come home, but what are you going to miss if you leave? And so that's been the defining moment when I really said yes, instead of giving up and running from the pain, and what I needed to do in my journey to heal myself and to find out who I was and what I was all about. So I think the mediumship was just a tool spirit used to get me to connect in, to hear my inner voice, to hear, the voice of the divine within, so that they could teach me how to love me. And that led to me, Mother Mary coming to my life. And that was her role, where she taught me how to love me. Because if you're walking around with all this unhealed stuff and all this stuff, all that's going to manifest in your work, and that was the gift that she gave me, was to inviting me how to love me, which is really, really kind of amazing, and it, so the whole journey led me to learning to love myself, which once you learn to love yourself, the whole dimension of your life totally changes. It transforms in, the things you could do. Because you're no longer worried about what anybody else thinks. You're just following your heart, and just these incredible opportunities open up, and incredible connections. So the whole goal of the spiritual journey, is to experience the divine in such a way that you know what unconditional love is, and then in turn loving yourself that way. Once you learn what it is, you can love yourself, warts and all, even your wounded places and your unwounded places, and realize and see your own divinity in that loving yourself. So that's really the whole journey. And we also came to understand, even though I do mediumship work, in most cases, it's not about the mediumship work. It's about getting people into our lives. So those that are ready to awaken, we can take them on that journey to go deeper and further, because, you know, people who have lost loved ones, that is a catalyst to your spiritual journey sometimes.
Mhm.
They start looking for answers, and where's my loved one? And they realize, oh, there's a whole dimension out there that I don't even know of. And we take them even further and say, well, yeah, you know, you can talk with your loved one, you can talk with God too, you can talk with angels, you can talk with spirit guides, you can talk with, you know, and it's just so amazing to see the transformation in people that are willing to go there. And of course, you know this, because I think you mentioned it earlier, you know, on the spiritual journey, you have to get to the point where you just surrender to what is brought into your life, because it's a gift, it's a teacher, even if it's very, very painful. You know, we always say you need to invite pain in for a cup of tea, because it's got a lot to teach you, you know.
Yeah.
And embrace it and learn to love from it, you know.
Yeah. And surrender is a funny word to use, because even though we use that word, surrender, it's like you couldn't not just give and be where you are. I know we do surrender, but it's not a surrender as, you know, the white flag, I give up.
Right.
It's not that sort of surrender, I give up. It's actually a surrender of, I'm ready to now go forward. That's how I feel when, you know, we use that word. It's a very beautiful place to be. And I love the way you're explaining loving of self, because we're taught from such a young age that, you know, you love everybody else.
Right.
You can love that picture on the wall even, but if you love yourself, you're vain, or whatever else you're told. So we're not really shown as children to really, you know, it's okay to, I like this dress, and, you know, flitter around or whatever else. You know, don't do that. Just, you know, just be quiet or whatever else it is. So it's all that programming we have that in the end you have to, well, you get to the stage that you have to sit back and accept and invite the love of who you are into your life, into you, which is what you did. And so that, yeah, and I love the way you described that, Susan. That was beautiful.
I always say that there's only two prayers you ever need to pray: bring me to peace, and teach me how to love me. Because isn't that what everybody's looking for? Love and peace.
Yeah, for sure.
When you look at it, and most of us, when we pray, we want to fix the outer world,
everybody else.
And what we need to do is invite spirit to fix the inner world and bring us to peace. Because when you're at peace and when you're at love, the outer world or all that drama kind of goes away, because you don't need it as a teacher anymore. We draw into our lives, spirit tells us this all the time, we draw into our lives the experiences that can best help us grow. And that's some really painful things. But that's the surrender, not the white flag, you're right, but the surrender to, if divine spirit asked me to swim in a pit of alligators underwater in the dark for 20 minutes to get to the other side, are you willing to do that?
That's a big ask.
Right. And it's the person that wants to know that divine love, wants to know truth so much, that's willing to go through whatever it takes. And if it means you have to be stripped bare and lying naked on the floor, not knowing you can get up and say, it's okay to be here.
Yeah.
You know, because I have found my absolute greatest God moments in my greatest pain. And by going into it instead of running from it. And that's why there's so much addiction and drugs and alcohol and and people everybody's running from their pain. And yet the brave soul that really wants to grow spiritually will go dive right into it and see where it takes you. So there's another saying yes. You saying yes to whatever it takes to get that divine alignment and find that divinity and that voice of the divine within, and then express that in the world. And so our purpose in life is what Spirit has taught me is to become love.
Mm.
And what we do with that love is our mission. And so everybody's looking for their mission. I mean, they think their purpose is their mission, but it's not. It really is to evolve the consciousness into alignment with divine love and then express that in the world. And that's your mission. What you do with that love is up to you.
And sometimes you don't have to be doing what we're doing, for instance, to spread a word or whatever. And I say to so many people, like, oh, I'm just doing this, or I'm not doing what I feel I should be doing, or whatever. I say, but you go to the shopping centre, yes. Do you smile at people? Yes. I said, you're doing what you're meant to do. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that's all it takes is just a smile to somebody. And there's a difference in just a smile because it's a service smile, but a real genuine smile at somebody can completely and utterly change their day. And to you, you've done nothing. To them, you've done probably more than you could ever realise. So it's that beingness of coming from yourself to understand that you are so much more than you are, which is what you have done, Susan. But you know what? We could talk for another 3 hours. And unfortunately, our time is sort of ticking away because we're on this linear time down on this earth, and it does make it a bit awkward.
But we've got to stretch the time a bit because we haven't heard anything about Byron Bay and coming to the centre, the current centre.
Yes, and your wonderful books that you've written. And
so we'll stretch time.
We'll stretch time.
Time.
Yeah, so you've been to many, well, as to appreciate, as you say, you've been to many places. You've just been taken there, given up, sold up, whatever, believed in, and now you're where your home is.
Correct.
That you've created.
Correct.
And before we go into that, if you really, really want to see it and can't physically go there, there's a beautiful, I guess it's a drone has gone around and around and around to show you the garden. And it is well worth just sitting and being with that scene. Tell us about it.
Okay. So in our following Spirit, we from Virginia Beach, Spirit told us to sell everything and move to Sedona, Arizona, which is that's a sacred site. I don't know if you've been there before, but it's quite powerful. Of course, I cried every other day because it brings up all your unhealed stuff. So that's why they sent us there, and we lived there. And then they asked us to move to Byron Bay. We went to visit first, and we know the pattern. We go first, and they'll say, we'll move there. And I don't know if you knew this, but energetically, Byron Bay is as a sister city to Sedona. Yes. Yeah. And Byron Bay is a very soft, feminine energy. And I think a lot of Spirit sending us there was to see if we would say yes. Would there be something that we bumped up against that we would say, no, I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Sure, there were misgivings about, how can I move to Australia and live there and my kids are still here? And what if something happens and but we did it. And at the time it was wonderful because I think for every American dollar, we got 2 Australian dollars at the time when we lived there. So we
don't get much more now.
Yeah. And then I was shocked that it only cost 2.5 cents a minute to call back to the United States. So we could still do our readings, still have our clients because we had our website, and just do the readings at a different time. And we still did our work over in Australia. Beautiful, beautiful experience living there. And then we were led, Spirit, when I started meditating, they asked us to go to Medjugorje. Are you familiar with Medjugorje? That's where Mother Mary appeared to the 6 Bosnian children. This is back in 81, I believe, is when it happened. And I kept getting that we were supposed to go to Medjugorje. And we tried to get 2 tickets. And synchronistically enough, a friend out of the blue sent me a book on Medjugorje right then. And we could only get 1 ticket, and I had to go by myself. Mm-hmm. And because Spirit wouldn't leave me alone. Every time I met it, go to Medjugorje. and we would. So I went by myself. I was so taken care of it. I mean, I can't tell you all the synchronistic things that happened, but this is where I met Mother Mary, because I'm not Catholic, you know. And the first day I was there, I was sitting there. I didn't know a soul in the world except for a couple of people I met. I mean, it's just amazing how I was taken care of. But I'm praying and meditating in front of her statue in St. James Church, and I hear this audible, again, another one of these audible voices that says, "You've invited Jesus into your heart, now you're going to invite me." And just my heart went open. I totally understood the mother, the divine mother, and her role. It was just like this, oh my gosh, you know, the mother, you know, being raised fundamentalist Christian, you know, Mother Mary was just, they didn't raise her up on a pedestal like the Catholics do. They didn't understand her role, but she really was, you know, an aspect of the divine being, just as Jesus was an aspect of the divine masculine. She was an aspect of the divine feminine. And so that was how I met Mother Mary. And I needed to meet her because that's her role when she comes into your life, is to teach you how to love you, you know. And I so desperately needed that. You know, when you're raised, you're an awful sinner and a lowly worm and not good enough, and you know, that kind of thing. That's a lot of indoctrination that has to be pulled out of you, so to speak, you know. So that's how I met her, which then after that, we were going to end up moving to Bosnia, because Spirit had said, well, why don't you move here for a while? And so we went back to Australia and thought, okay, let's sell everything, go back to the United States, and we'll plan on moving to Bosnia. But once we got back to the United States, Spirit said, no, you don't have to go. We just wanted to see if you were willing. You know, and I really think Spirit does that to you. They push you to say how much you're willing. If you say go, we'll go, you know, which then led us to, we went to visit a healer in Brazil, and we were at a mass, and that's where we got the message to build the Casa de Santa Maria in San Luis, and I mean, in the United States. And we said, okay, we don't have any money. And then Jesus told me it's to be called Casa de Santa Maria. And I said, well, Jesus, what about you? And he says, it's for my mother. And I thought, isn't that like a good son, you know, looking out after his mother? But literally it is a place where Mother Mary will work on you, and her healing helpers will work on you. We've seen a lot of amazing things, even though we just have the 300-foot diameter prayer meditation garden there now. We've just had some amazing fun experiences, you know, of people awakening and healing already. So that's been our mission. We were led to San Luis. We didn't want it to be here in San Luis because it's 8,000 feet up in the air, and you know, high desert, cold. And we came and looked at land, and we didn't have any money at the time, and we saw the land, and we got, oh, no, we can't live here. You know, it's just too high up. It's too cold. So we went back to Taos, New Mexico, which is 60 miles south, to spend the night. And I woke up in the middle of the night hearing her voice say, surrender to the land. And I said, okay. And I didn't have enough nerve to tell Milt, you know, until we got to Gallup, New Mexico, on the way back to Sedona. And at lunch I said, let me tell you what happened. Mother Mary said, surrender to the land. He says, okay. So we sat there eating lunch, planning on what we were going to do next. We came home. We put the house on the market for sale. We bought the house. It was our first house we had ever bought together. We bought it for like $142,000. 11 months later, when we put it on the market, we had 3 full offers for $209,000. And so that gave us $50,000 to make the move. But once we got home, we wrote 3 people and said, this is where Mother Mary wants her casa. And one of them wrote back and said, I'll buy the land for you. And so how could you not deny something was going on, you know, that's where. So we've been here raising money to create this sacred place. We've got the garden. She said she wanted a 10.5-foot totem pole carving from a Native American put in the middle. of the garden because she didn't want it to look Catholic. She wanted it to be all inclusive of the divine. We've got 2 labyrinths, a medicine wheel, a stone circle, that kind of, and a prayer chapel, and 2 labyrinths, a divine feminine and a divine masculine labyrinth, which has, so anybody can go out there. It's open to anybody. We get people leave little notes because we're not living on the land yet. And they'll leave us little notes like, oh, this place is amazing. I could stay here forever, and those kind of things. So the energy is really, you could just feel the presence. And that's what you felt in Medjugorje, was when you would go, it would be like being in the mother's womb. And isn't that what everybody's looking for, is divine love?
Yes.
And so that's our mission, to create this sacred place. And that's what we've been doing over the past 10 years, is creating this sacred site and this sacred place, for the Divine Mother and for her presence and that kind of thing, and sorry about the kitty. I couldn't keep her out.
I couldn't hear. No,
she wanted to be part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. No, her energy is wonderful. Well, we're now going to have to sort of finish, unfortunately. As I said before, you do have 2 very interesting books that you're giving away. One is on ETs and one is on your spirituality, your mediumship journey that you wrote. And we've been requested that you send an email to Susan and Milt and just put in which one you want, but that'll be on the site. There's no problems there. The ET one sounds fascinating. Even if you don't believe, we always know there's something out there. So we're going to leave that one for another time, Susan, if that's okay with you.
I will say, though, that the day we installed the Mother Mary statue, a UFO showed up, and I have a picture of it.
Wow.
Yeah. We just don't know what's out there. And because, we're becoming more and more aware, more and more being sighted. And we've had a few guests now saying that they have had sightings and the communication and things like that. So
yeah, and I'll send you the picture. Of
wonderful.
Wow. Right.
Yeah, it's a little silver egg sitting about a half mile back, about just maybe a few hundred feet off the ground. And I had invited them to come the day before. I meditated and said, wouldn't it be cool if the circle makers came? Crop circle makers. And
they
sure enough, they showed up. They came. Yeah.
That's great. Yes. And we wish you all the very best in your new venture with this TV program. And I'm sure people, once it gets going, are going to, they'll be entertained as well as on a level being educated. And that's one of the wonderful things about TV, and even our the internet and things like that. Though there can be a dark side behind it, there's certainly that wonderful light side that we can share and be open, and so one teaches. So, have you got anything to say?
No, it's been really great.
Wonderful.
All ears to hear.
Yeah, and it's wonderful how you spoke. Talked through all your steps, and the trust is so important, to trust yourself. And if it's like Susan, she walked away from marriage. I walked away from marriage. Ray walked away from marriage, and we were talking before about car accidents. He said to me, "You've been in lots of accidents, haven't you?" I went, "Oh, well, I suppose so." But we just go doing things without ever actually stopping and sitting quietly within ourselves, and then going in and feeling the love and the trust of you.
Yeah. Can I share this one message I saw just recently? I thought fits perfectly in what we're doing here, but it says, she fell in love with life and life loved her right back. And that's what I've experienced.
Beautiful.
You say yes and life will love you right back.
It does. Well, I think on that beautiful note, we will say goodbye to all of you who have been watching. And I'm sure once again you've gone, wow, because as you know, we've had people from all walks of life, all with their own very, very special journey, which they have been so gracious in sharing with us. I know I have learned a lot, and I sort of think, well, I do know a fair bit, but certainly not. I'm still learning things, as we all do.
Aren't we all?
We all do. Sure. So thank you very much for joining us. And thank you, Susan, for so graciously sharing. And like I said, go and check that video out on their website. It's beautiful. Anyway, I'm going to say goodbye. What about you?
Thanks, Susan.
Goodbye. Thank you so
Bye.
much. Fun.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
And write Milt anytime.
I will do. It's wonderful getting his hug and kiss.
Yes, yeah. And if people write him, they'll get a hug and kiss from him too, because I always said we have to clone him. So.
Okay, Doug said. Thanks a lot. Catch you.
All right. Take care. Lots of love.
Thanks, same here.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.